Raised by a mother who battled severe illness throughout her life and a dad who was her carer, the pressure took a toll that split up Dale's family and eventually left him looking after both parents. In recent years, he's endured the loss of not only his mother and father, but also a son, stillborn at 28 weeks. Battling with overwhelming stress and anxiety, Dale's done everything he can to process his pain and forge a healthy path forward, standing resolutely alongside his wife no matter what comes.
Everyone's mental health is as important as each other's, and doesn't matter how you've got yourself there or what your story is. Like, yeah, there'll always be someone that will be able to help you.
Yeah, and you're worthy of that.
Absolutely, yeah, definitely.
This is Dale Rush's story. Welcome to Young Blood, the award-winning volunteer podcast dedicated to young men's mental health. My name's Callum McPherson, I'm a journalist, and this is a platform for everyday men to share lived experience stories and show that no matter what you're going through, you're not alone. Suicide is the #1 killer of young people, and changing that starts with speaking up. So let's do it. If you haven't already, please subscribe to this podcast so you don't miss a thing. Help us reach more people by taking 10 seconds to give the show a rating on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. And if you've got some feedback on this conversation, I'd love to hear it. You can vote in the poll and leave a comment on every Spotify episode. I read them all. This show touches on some tough topics that may provoke strong emotions. If you find anything in this chat distressing, please do whatever you need to do to look after yourself. Dale, tell us about growing up in your family home.
Mum was she was born with sort of spine and nerve damage, so she had to undergo some pretty serious surgeries when she was young. So she was always fairly limited to what she could do with us. So we had to grow up fairly quick, sort of thing, to be a bit more independent in the home.
And it wasn't just that she wasn't mobile, she was also really unwell a lot of the time?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, so she had a lot of health complications and stuff like that. But yeah, mobility was predominantly one of them. She was all right for a while, but till I was probably about 15 or 16, that's when she was becoming a bit more bedridden sort of thing.
And what did that mean for how she was in herself?
Oh, she, like, quite a bit of a struggle. They owned a business when they were younger and they had to close that down. My old boy stopped working to be full-time care of my mum and stuff like that. So
is your memory of her that she would be frustrated and upset and a lot of the time, or was she putting on a brave face?
No, she coped really well, and that's something that I learnt a lot from her, was how to handle, dealing with tricky situations and just getting through them and stuff. And she put on a very brave face most of the time with it all. So you certainly seen some struggles that she went through, which was pretty hard at a young age to see your parents go through that stuff. But yeah, they found a way to make it work most of the time.
But you still had a strong connection to your
absolutely,
your mum and dad.
Yeah. Until my wife came in the picture, Mum was the most important person in my life, and very close to my dad as well. And me and my dad worked very well together, looking after Mum and stuff like that. I have a sister, but she fell out of contact with my parents when she was 16. She's 2 years older than me, sort of thing. So I would have been about 14 when she left the home. So,
but all you ever knew was your mum suffering and trying to get through it, and your dad trying to get the family through it.
That's right.
You had to just normalise that.
Yeah.
What do you think that did for your development?
Probably helped me mature at a younger age, a lot quicker than, I wasn't just running around doing stuff until the early 20s. I was working as soon as I could and stuff like that, because obviously my parents weren't working and all that sort of jazz. So
you had to take life real serious?
Yeah, pretty well, straight into it. And
do you feel like you missed out on being a kid?
No, they gave me quite a lot when I was younger. Like, everyone's got a different sort of story growing up and that, and like I wouldn't change it or anything like that. But yeah, you just had to sort of take it all a bit more seriously at a younger age, I guess. So,
what was difficult about seeing your mum in that position and seeing your dad having to try to hold that together?
Just that there wasn't really a great deal that we could do. She was always in pain all the time, sort of thing, and Dad was struggling quite a bit trying to deal with that, and probably his mental health, which he certainly hid very well. Like, he really hid that.
Did it make you try to put on a character, like try to be a jokester or anything like that, to try to lift the mood or anything like that you're conscious of?
It meant a lot to me to sort of make them proud and stuff like that. You know what I mean? And try and just do what I could to, it was very important to me, making them proud. So I went out and got an apprenticeship when I was 16 and all that sort of stuff, and was always working hard and trying to help them around the place. And I just wanted to try and help them make their life as easy as possible, given the circumstances they were in, I guess. So
I bet that's something that's carried on into the rest of your life. You're someone who sort of put the world on their shoulders.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially moving into sort of how their health sort of progressed. Got to the point where, mum was, she was having quite a few falls and she broke her ankle, and that was probably the catalyst to sort of where she was stopped walking completely and stuff like that. And then the health declined pretty seriously after that. And at that point, sort of when I was about 21, I would get phone calls in the middle of the night. Mum's had a fall or something like that, and had to go around there and help them. Obviously, I moved out of home with my wife when I was about sort of 17, but I tried to stay, get around my parents as much as I could still to help them. But then I guess, it was probably quite a lot for my dad to take on, and he was a bit probably too proud to get help with it all as well. So, and then to be honest with you, when COVID came through and I distanced myself from their place to make sure that I wasn't getting them sick, their health was already pretty compromised. That was probably a major point as well, their health declining.
Just to backtrack there, because there's a lot there.
Yep.
So when you're in your teenage years and your mum's health's declining seriously and your dad's having to be basically full-time carer and your sister ends up leaving, like what happened to your family at that time?
Yeah, kind of divided the family, and I always sort of found myself just in the middle of everyone. Like I just wanted to get along with everyone really, but it was sort of me and my parents and my grandparents, and that didn't make contact with my parents at all. So it was purely just myself.
And you were in a reversed relationship where you're the one feeling like you're looking after them.
Effectively, at a young age too, sort of thing, which is a bit tricky. But you just do it. Like, you don't question it. It's what you do when it's unconditional love, your parents and family, you do whatever you have to do. Sort of thing.
Adapt, but you also must have been conscious of this isn't really how it's supposed to be.
Yeah, of course. You certainly got harder over the years.
And so did your dad talk to you about it? He said he struggled to talk about his own struggles. So was he able to express to you, their gratitude, or could you have that level of communication or not? He wasn't capable?
Not really. He really closed himself away with everything. He'd only really talk to me on an everyday basis. How you going? How's things? Never really how he was going or how he was dealing with mum's health and stuff like that.
Would you try to get that out of him?
In the later years, once I understood better how it was affecting them, but he really wouldn't. He would put himself last every time. He wasn't interested in going to the doctors if he needed to. He wasn't interested in anything like that. He would just, mum was his number one concern, and he'd look after her. And he just wouldn't share any other emotion about it really.
So I suppose there's parts that you have to admire and want to emulate, and then there's parts of it where you can see the folly in it as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, I dedicated his life to looking after my mum, which is something I'm very proud of him for. And it wouldn't have been easy at all to isolate yourself to that small world and give up everything just to look after people that you love. But he did it, and it speaks volumes to me on sort of the person my dad was to me anyway.
But then he couldn't accept help, and he couldn't open himself up to other people being able to help him, and you would have seen the impact of that too.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I personally, my mum was very open about sort of her mental health and stuff like that, and expressed their emotion verbally in a good way, I guess. And I'll probably follow her path a bit more with that. Like, I was never one to close away how I was feeling or anything like that. I was always able to speak to my mum about it. We had a good relationship like that. So
what about your own mental health throughout this whole time when you've got your mum and your dad as the focus always? but you're going through heaps and you're probably having to compartmentalize to be able to deal with it. What was your own experience of what you were going through?
In the younger years, I would never question my mental health at all. Like, I always was all right. I was in the gym training. I was working full time from 15 years old, sort of thing.
Like keeping yourself real busy?
Yeah, completely busy, and never really sort of, until I got into probably my early to mid 20s, where I started noticing, potentially the physical effects of anxiety, but I didn't understand what it was. And I was, in my younger years, no major issues. As I started to sort of mature into my mid 20s, that's when I sort of noticed something wasn't quite sort of right. And I don't know if that's like
what was the catalyst for that? Like, when did you start noticing?
Definitely when my dad passed away. It was very unforeseen. He was 54, and I would have been 26 or something like that.
So young.
Yeah, and there was just so much going on.
So that was a sudden loss. That wasn't a
it was very sudden and unexpected. Like I said, my dad kept everything all to himself, so we weren't aware that he might have been struggling or whatnot. But with such a serious, significant event in my life, I had to just be there for Mum and look after her. So I think that was triggering anxiety in the background with myself, but I just wasn't focusing on it. I was more concerned about making sure my mum was okay.
Yeah, so you didn't feel like you really had the time or space to be able to grieve that properly, because you had someone
right.
who was now reliant on you.
Yeah.
So you couldn't grieve that loss because automatically your mum then needed a carer.
Absolutely. So, being that I was the only person in contact with him and my wife, as soon as my dad passed away, we had to sort of work out how we're going to help Mum.
And what sort of situation was she in by that point?
She was bedridden. She was immobile. When Dad went into hospital for those short few days, so did Mum. And when he passed away, we had no choice but to get Mum full-time care in a nursing home, which is not something she wanted to do at 52.
And not easy to organise either.
No, it's not.
And you're trying to deal with something that's catastrophic for your personal life.
Yeah.
Organise a funeral, organise your mum to go into care. There's just so much going on there.
Yeah, absolutely. And, organising to sell the family home and all that sort of stuff, because when you put people in care, they want money straight away, and it's just it's a hard time.
Yes.
You don't get to focus on the loss or anything like that that I had with my dad.
So how do you remember getting through all of that?
Just instinct, like you just have to do it. Like I just didn't think about it. There was no one else there to do it, and you just do what you have to do.
Just in survival mode.
Yeah, absolutely. Which once again, like, really started to push my mental health a bit, because my mum was struggling really bad at that point with her mental health. And I started sort of understanding that, hey, there might actually be something going on here, like anxiety and that.
And there comes a point where it doesn't matter who you are, you're under that much stress.
That's it.
Cracks are going to appear, and
that's right.
Sometimes it might be in a way that you don't necessarily understand, but you're eventually going to have a physiological response and an emotional response to what's happening.
Absolutely. I was very fortunate to have a very supportive workplace, very supportive friends, and lots of good friends at work. And
how did you come to understand what was going on? Did you seek out advice?
Yeah, I spoke with a few really close mates at work, and they said, look, you've got to be kidding yourself if you think that you're not going to be struggling mentally after what you've been through so far. They suggested, look, we've spoken to a psychologist once before. Maybe that's something that you should do, and this is how you would go about it.
And what did you think about that, having been someone who'd gone through so much and never gone down that road?
I don't know. I just never thought that it was necessary for myself. I thought there was always someone that was worse off. I never sort of thought that I was worthy of that attention, or I don't really quite know how to say it. But so I was a bit, unsure about going and doing that. But I made my mate goes, just make the appointment, go to the docs, book it in. They'll look after you, and you'll get to someone. And just if it doesn't work and you don't like it, then you've got nothing to lose, sort of thing.
And how did that process go?
It was, huge, very good. Yeah, like
because you've got to jump through a few hoops. You got to go to the doctor, get the mental health plan, then go to the psych, and wait. Yeah. How long do you have to wait before you saw someone? The
guy that I spoke to in the local area was really good. Like I called him and left a voice message saying, "Hey mate, just want to come in and have a chat." And he called me straight back and said, "Do you want to come in tomorrow?"
Oh, okay, well that was great. And then when you did go and have a chat with him, what was that like for you?
Like I felt like I just poured 10 to 15 years or more worth of like just everything out, put it all on the table, and it was good. Like I always had support from friends and stuff like that.
Were you surprised by the experience?
Yeah, like I was surprised how you do feel somewhat relieved speaking to a professional, and once you understand that it's a long-term ongoing thing that you need to do. It's not just going to fix itself after one session.
And that there's nothing wrong with you.
That's right, absolutely. And any daily battles that you have, they'll help you. They'll give you tools to deal with that, which that was huge for me.
Yeah, because you're a man of action and you want practical steps that
that's right.
You can actually do something about it.
And
I think that's the toughest thing with this mental health stuff, especially when we've got no experience with it. We don't know where to begin. And so you need those actionable steps, especially as a man.
Yeah.
I think men, more than women, we really just want to fix the problem in the most practical way.
That's it.
And so if we can get that laid out, that helps a lot. What was he able to tell you about your situation?
Just help me understand that what you're feeling is like, it's normal. Like you've been through this much and it's ongoing, and it's going to wear you down, and you need to understand that, you are dealing with anxiety, and that everyone has anxiety, but on different levels, and you just need to learn how to maintain yours a bit better. And he gave me some very useful tools to do that, some breathing exercises, and trying to understand how to acknowledge when you are feeling anxious and stuff like that. And there was, and even still to this day now, like I take some medication which is temporary when you feel like you need it. It's like taking a Panadol for a headache sort of thing, and that does help quite a lot. It's a beta blocker, and it just helps you out of situations, which helps you build
confidence.
Yeah, effectively. Yeah, with the most simple things like going to the shops, because you would almost have an anxiety attack going to the shops. And
so that was your experience. You'd get really stressed out in situations that used to be normal for you.
That's exactly right. And that was probably the worst point of sort of where my mental health got to with the physical effects. Was simple daily tasks just weren't simple anymore. But with the help of the psychologist and the doctors and stuff, you manage, like you learn ways to deal with it, and then you get better and stronger, and then more confident with
situations. It becomes like a muscle that you have to build, and
that's right,
a skill to be able to maintain it, and then you just know yourself better and better.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Just acknowledging it and being accountable for it is one of the most important things I've found, and you'll get through.
And I suppose your self-talk as well, because when all this is going on and you used to go to the shops, no problem. You used to go to the pub, no problem. And all of a sudden you're turning into a mess doing it.
Yeah.
It's easy to condemn yourself and say like, what the fuck's wrong with you?
Yeah.
You know, you're such a loser now, you're hopeless, and do that, when really that's not the case at all. So just understanding that a bit better, being able to be kind to yourself.
Yeah, definitely.
And then like you said, actually take the steps necessary to fix it.
That's it.
Be able to cope with it.
Yeah.
So tell us about your partner.
My wife, Tamara, we've been together for 12 and a half years. She's always been very supportive of me throughout our relationship. which is when I felt like it was good to have her there when I needed someone to vent to, because I normally would vent to mum, sort of thing. So
She's been there through it all.
yeah, absolutely, and yeah, very supportive, very grateful to have her. Very important to have her by my side, especially when mum's health started declining probably about a year and a half ago. She passed away, which that was pretty hard. But yeah, she was there with me the whole time, with it all, every day in the hospital. So yeah,
What does it mean to you to have someone like that?
Saved my life.
And what about you for her?
We're each other's rocks, mate. We're there for each other through everything. Not only did we have sort of my family battles that we went through together, but we also had a very tough time conceiving our first child, who we lost as a stillborn about 6 weeks after my mum passed away.
Man, that must have been just incredibly tough, all of that at once.
Yeah, it's very compounding. And yeah, once again, just I don't know what we would have done without each other at that point.
How did you guys help each other to endure that?
Just reminding each other that we have each other, that you don't ever want to compare yourself to other people and other people's situations. It doesn't necessarily help thinking that there's always people worse off out there, but you just have to focus on all the good things that you do have in life, even with the weight of all the grief of loss and stuff like that. There still is good reasons to be happy,
And you were both able to see that,
absolutely,
even in that darkness.
yeah, within each other. I'm just so grateful for her, and I'm certain she feels the same way. So we're there for each other throughout our mental health issues and stuff like that. The loss of our little son at about 28 weeks was that was really, really hard for my wife. She's experienced the loss of her dad when she was 10 as well.
There's so much loss in your family.
It's just the way that our story goes, unfortunately. Like, we made the most of every moment we had with everyone who's not here with us now.
You don't choose what happens, do you?
That's it, mate. You just have to play the ball where it lies, sort of thing. And
so, how did you, as a partner and as a father, process that grief for yourself and then also for your wife?
To be honest with you, being that the loss of our son was so soon after the loss of my mum, I was just numbed by it all. And I then put myself in the mindset that I had to be strong for my wife at this point. So I probably hadn't, and maybe still haven't, grieved the loss of my mum properly. And still potentially the loss of our son as well, which, was very hard. Sharing that news that we were pregnant with him, with my mum, when in her last few months, was something very special to us. And it was very, as all children are, mate, they're very important.
You must have just wanted to sort of curse the sky and say, why me? I know you're not that kind of bloke from talking to you. It doesn't sound like, you're not someone who plays the victim, but God, it must just have felt so unfair.
It does. It still does. It certainly did at the time. Something very important that my mum taught me was there's always a reason to be happy. Like, you have to find it.
A silver lining.
You have to.
And not let the world turn you bitter.
That's right. Absolutely. Otherwise, you just can't bury your head in the sand. You certainly need to acknowledge how you're feeling and deal with it, but you have to keep moving. You have to keep yourself busy, and you have to be there for each other, and let each other know when I'm feeling down. I'd let her know, and she'd be the strength, and the next day I'd be the strength for her when she's down, sort of thing. So we were very lucky to have each other.
And you've actually got to acknowledge it and take that action in order to be able to keep going.
That's exactly right.
And I think it sounds like from talking about your dad that he used to push through, but he wouldn't process it, and that ultimately that had a really bad impact on him.
That's just, you have to, like,
we can't do it alone. Anyone can't do it alone.
You don't gain anything from not speaking. Like,
it's a hard thing to do, though, isn't it?
It is, but
not as hard as not doing it.
There is so much help out there for people that they can find very easily, and there's so many people that have been through their own battles that would happily spend, their time of day helping you.
Yeah, and just because technically, there's always someone who's got it worse than you, it doesn't mean that your experience isn't valid.
No, not at all. No, everyone's mental health is as important as each other's, and doesn't matter how you've got yourself there or what your story is. Like, there'll always be someone that will be able to help you.
And you're worthy of that.
Absolutely, yeah, definitely.
It took you a while to believe that. I think that potentially because you spent so much time prioritizing everyone else.
Yeah, I think so. I now feel like sharing my story is beneficial to help other people.
Definitely.
I still think to myself, maybe it's not as bad, and maybe it's not worth the time of sharing. But then if I can help other people understand that there is light at the end of the tunnel with all these losses, then it's very important to me, sort of thing. So
and you've gone through and are continuing to go through some super tough stuff that unfortunately is also really common. There's so many blokes like you out there thinking, oh, I don't think this is really worth anyone else's time, but it so is.
Yeah, definitely.
And other guys are going to hear you talk about this who are going through it, and it's going to help them massively. And it's going to make them feel like actually they're worthwhile and their story means something.
Yeah.
And that's a huge part of all this.
Definitely. You should never belittle any situation that you're in, thinking that it's not worthy of help or worthy of being spoken about. That's for sure. Whether it is or if it's something major or if it's something quite small, it's still,
you feel how you feel, and you're having the reaction that you're having.
That's it.
So you got to be able to deal with it and not feel ashamed or like, oh, it's not a big enough problem for me to go and get help or for me to complain about it. But it's such a common mindset.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
And especially for someone who's had some real big stuff to deal with and had to get on with it.
Yeah.
And getting help isn't about like, oh, I can't do this anymore, I want someone else to do it for me. It's actually about enabling yourself to have the tools to be able to keep going.
That's right. Absolutely, mate. Yeah. I agree.
So how do you feel about being a dad? How did you feel about being a dad during the pregnancy? What's your take on that?
It was just so surreal. Like I said, it took us 3 years to conceive our little guy, which just felt like it was never going to happen. So it was very important when we found out that Tamara was pregnant, and very special for us, and very special to be able to share that with my mum before she passed.
So there'd been a long build up to get to that point.
Yeah. One night she just wasn't quite feeling all right, and we went straight to the hospital to just sort of see if everything was all good, just do a sanity sort of scan, and that they couldn't find a heartbeat, which
nothing worse than that, man. Can't imagine.
Just to seeing how much pain my wife was in with that, just I don't wish it on anyone, man. Like, really, really is hard. And then the reality kicks in the situation and how serious it is, and it's not a nice place to be in.
No, I'm so sorry I had to go through all that pain, man. I can really see it.
Yeah.
And it's so sad that it is a common thing, and I can't pretend to imagine that feeling. But fuck, to be able to survive that as a couple and be able to be a rock for your wife in the toughest situation, that's hats off to you, and be able to keep going through that. But man, I can see the pain in your eyes. Like, it's just brutal.
It always still pretty pretty raw, I guess. Like we cope. Just I feel like I've been through so much stuff that, you know, we deserve this and we deserve happiness. So I'll keep reminding my wife that, you know, it will be okay. It will work out for us, and we'll be holding the little one soon, sort of thing, because, you know, we deserve it as much as everyone else does.
Amen. And I suppose you just got to keep that faith no matter what happens. Yeah. And as long as you're still here and your heart's still beating and you're still going out there trying to live the best life you can, you've just got to try to see the positive. And even when you've gone through just an absolute shitstorm like you have, obviously you've still been able to find that throughout with your wife's help. And it's just, that's a success story, man.
Absolutely. I appreciate that, mate.
Just takes so much strength to be able to get to this point. And you absolutely do deserve it.
Yeah.
And you're going to be the best dad.
Thank you, mate. I appreciate it very much. Thank you.
Yeah. And what's your message for everyone who has gone through or is going through losing someone that's extremely close to them?
Just talk about it. Just reach out and talk, because it is compounding, and you can only benefit from it. So, yeah.
And there's always going to be light at the end of the tunnel.
That's it, mate. You can only hope, but stay positive and you'll always move forward.
That's it for this episode. If you like what we're all about, support us by following Young Blood Men's Mental Health on Instagram and Young Blood Mental Health on TikTok. Every podcast episode is recorded in professional quality video, and they're all up on our Young Blood Men's Mental Health YouTube channel. So please show some love and subscribe. Thanks to our local business supporters, NB&A Group and Pro Realty Property Consultants. You can find everything there is to know about the podcast at youngbloodmensmentalhealth.com. And most importantly, please share these stories with anyone in your life who needs to know they're not alone. We're all in this together. Catch you next time.